Good afternoon, everyone. This is I can't even think what my name is. Constitutional attorney Catherine Henry. Still traveling back, most of the way back though, from the Hersey area where we went to the blessing of the guns at, was it Fowler? Fowler, what's it called?
Gun range.
Gun range? That doesn't sound right. Anyway, great opportunity. We really appreciated being joined by members of the Michigan Home Guard and some other individuals who loved fighting for our freedom. At any rate, 2 days ago, I went on and did a Facebook Live, and it was a semi-quick update. While I was on there, you guys were bombarding me with questions, and they were coming in so hot I couldn't even... Oh, we were going the wrong direction, babe. Right? Oh, never mind. You got it. Never mind. I forgot where we're going. Sorry. So the questions were coming in so quick I couldn't even scroll down fast enough to be able to read them all, because on my phone it only shows me like the 3 most recent comments or questions. So I had asked you guys as viewers if somebody wanted to email me the questions from the comment thread. I would go ahead and answer those within 48 hours, and I did have 2 people that sent me questions, so I'm reading from one of those, the emails from one of those 2 individuals. So the first question, some of these I did answer, but the fact that a couple people thought they weren't answered, I'm just going to go ahead and answer them again, because I want to make sure you guys have that information. So I assume you'll order me by usual. Okay. And so number 1, is the legislature's case scheduled? No, the legislature's case is not scheduled. The legislature, where that case is at, is August 21st was the deadline for the Michigan Court of Appeals to issue their decision. Ooh, can you park me in the sun this way? Thanks, babe. Sure. So the August 21st was the date that the legislature, the date that the Court of Appeals had to issue the decision in the legislature's lawsuit against the governor. They did that, and they did that about 10:30 in the morning on August 21st. And then it was about a week later that Michael Williams, who's the attorney for the legislature, filed the appeal with the Michigan Supreme Court. So basically what that is he's saying that it's an application for leave to appeal, because it's not the kind, they're very rare types of appeals where you're guaranteed the right to have the Supreme Court hear your case. So he's asking for permission. He's asking for the Supreme Court to take the case. And so that's what he did back in late May, early June, when the when the Supreme Court said, nah, we're going to make the case be heard by the Michigan Court of Appeals first. And so that was the first case that I had filed a brief with the Michigan Supreme Court on these COVID issues. And my original brief was accepted by that court. Well, every brief that I've been submitting on these issues has been accepted by the Michigan Supreme Court or Michigan Court of Appeals since then. So that is one of the 2 briefs that I actually have to submit very shortly here. Time frame wise, the court rules allow, at the application stage, there's not really a deadline for the amicus parties to submit their briefs, which is what I would be, the attorney for the amicus interests of standing up for the U.S. and Michigan constitutions. But in reality, the reason why I was the only amicus attorney to have a brief submitted the first time this case was heard with the Michigan Supreme Court, now everyone wants to text message me. That's great. not while I was not doing a Facebook Live video, just during the Facebook Live video. Anyway, so the only reason why I was the main reason why I was the only attorney who had an amicus brief accepted in the Michigan Supreme Court the first go round is because I was paying attention, and I knew that just because the court rule said we had, a long time to expect documents to be filed and whatnot, it was going to happen, and it was going to happen then. And lo and behold, I filed my brief on June 2nd, and by June 4th, just about 48 hours later, they had made their decision. So no one else had the opportunity to file on that particular issue at that, time with that court. So anyway, so this week I really do need to have that brief done. But of course, you all know that the that the Michigan Supreme Court has requested that the attorneys brief 2 additional questions on the other case, the case where it's the 3 doctors and the 1 patient who sued the governor, the Michigan Attorney General, and the Michigan Director of the Department of Health and Human Services. And so, and because the governor, because they recognize the governor is not solely relying on the 1945 statute, but relying on the 1976 and more recently and more importantly on various provisions related to the public health code, the 2 issues they want briefed revolve around public safety and public health. Nothing that is, I'm just going to leave it at that. So I need to get that briefing done and submitted by Wednesday because that's the deadline the Supreme Court has issued for that. So anyway, when once the court essentially feels like they've got enough responses from, in the legislature's lawsuit, they have the legislature's brief, they have the governor's brief. They might wait till they know they have an amicus brief or 2 or whatever. But basically at that point, once they have the parties' briefs and they know that they're ready and the parties are wanting to speed things up and ask for immediate consideration, which I do believe is what Attorney Michael Williams asked for, then the court is probably going to go ahead and issue oral argument on the case. And so at that point, they don't have to, but I'm guessing they will. And they may end up having a decision about whether or not to even take the case, but that's probably going to be blended with the decision on the case overall. It's probably not going to be a decision where they're deciding, yes, we're going to take the case. Okay, now let's have briefing on the actual case itself, and then let's have a whole nother decision about the case itself. Probably going to be a round of oral arguments and a final decision that's going to address whether they're going to take the case, A, and B, what the decision for the whole case is regarding that. So we don't have a date for that, and I don't know when it'll be. I really do expect it'll be done in very short order. Given what's happened, a lot of people are thinking that the Michigan Supreme Court has delayed a lot of things. In several respects, they have not. I mean, I disagree with the fact that they didn't take the case in June, but for the cases when they are taking them and the briefing schedules and the oral argument schedules they're setting up, it's actually much shorter time frames than what the court rules really allow for. I mean, so it's faster than what it ordinarily would be. Okay, question, time frame for an expected order or decision. I guess I kind of just talked about that. It's hard to know what the time frame would be because, in the legislature's lawsuit, it's not even in court yet, so to speak. It's trying to get into court. So there is no time frame yet on that, but I just kind of talked about that. So the time frame for an expected decision or order on the case that was just heard this last Wednesday, like I said, briefing on that, on the 2 additional questions is due this coming Wednesday. I truly believe that within a week of that, we probably will have a decision. There's no guarantee. It's just my gut reaction or my hunch, if you will. So far, I've been accurate on how things are going and who's going to file what in these courts and how the decisions are going to come out and when they're going to come out. The only thing I've been a little off about is that Attorney Michael Williams didn't file his appeal by late Tuesday. That week he filed it that Thursday or Friday. So I was 2 or 3 days off as to when he would file his appeal. But who knows? Maybe he saw my videos and wanted to hold it off just for that purpose. If the EOs are unconstitutional, why the public health code? Again, that was a question that was posed the other day, and I don't get what the context of the question is. So maybe it'll come out in these other questions that are here. Oh my gosh, I see you guys are loading me up with questions. I can't, it doesn't, oh, this is letting me scroll today. For some reason, it wasn't letting me scroll the other day. Hello, Brenda Gilbert. Hey, Phil. Let's see. If the Michigan Supreme Court doesn't rule in our favor, what is the next step? Well, not to drop the issue with them, but we're not going to put all our eggs in one basket. And if they rule against freedom and against the Constitution, that's why we're going to focus on the judicial candidates like our Michigan Supreme Court Justice, Bridget McCormack, who's up for re-election this November. We will be talking about some good, viable candidates who love the Constitution. I will be working with all of you on that and disclosing that on the website and doing Facebook Live videos about that. But I got to get through this next couple of weeks before I can really dig into that and explaining that in detail. Yeah, the Michigan Supreme Court, it's just different than the Wisconsin Supreme Court. It really is not an apples to apples thing. Okay, it looks like I answered all those so far. Okay, so our justice is saying that there is valid reason for complaint. I guess I don't know what that question is. Are the justices saying that there is valid reason for complaint? I honestly don't know what that question means. If that's your question, from the other night, please see if you can reword it, and I'll gladly try to answer it. Has she made a formal statement in regards to this? Oh, yikes. What did I mention the other day? Formal statement. Oh, man. I don't have the context for these questions. If we win, what's next? Okay, so if we win at the Michigan Supreme Court level, what is next? Well, hopefully the order is written in such a way that it makes it obvious that the governor needs to shut up and go home, and not try to trample all over our constitutionally protected freedoms. So in that event, I honestly, it's too much if then. I don't know. There's too many ifs to tell you what the then would be. But it's definitely something that I will be explaining every step along the way. As soon as something happens, as soon as I have the opportunity to read the order and get on a Facebook Live connection, I will be explaining that to you and what it means in each step. It just depends on how they word the orders, and that's really at that point what happens. I would like to think that any law enforcement official who so far has been confused and trying to enforce these illegal and unconstitutional executive orders, should the Supreme Court come out and say, no, these are unconstitutional and illegal, I would like to think then that any law enforcement official who has been confused in enforcing them will wake up and go, oh, I guess I can't do that anymore. And I'd like to think that that means our media might actually cover the story that they're not enforceable and that the businesses shouldn't be enforcing them. But we'll see. Do you think the new mask order for youth sports will put additional pressure on the courts to rule against her? That's a very good point. I'm going to try to remember that specific point. And Kristen Megan, I hope that you got my text back the other day about the topic you did the video on. and the things you were running past me, I think something might be in this. I think we might be able to tie some of these ideas together in the brief that I will be submitting to the Michigan Supreme Court this week on that issue, because that definitely ties in with public health and public safety and the questions about those topics that the court was asking. So hopefully that can put the additional pressure on the court to rule against her on those issues. What was the 6-month thing the lawyer mentioned? Oh, I think that question was about me. I was the lawyer that mentioned in the Michigan Supreme Court on Wednesday that as of Wednesday, it had been 183 days since she had first declared a state of emergency in the state of Michigan. 183 days or 6 months. And she has already extended it into October by Executive Order 177. And last I checked, we were at Executive Order 180. So we are well on our way. You contrast that to 2019, where she only issued 19 executive orders total. Even she only did 19 executive orders in 2019. And that was with a polar vortex. The entire state was shut down because we physically couldn't go anywhere. But with COVID-19, all of a sudden, 180 executive orders so far this year. So I was just making that point with the court, because a lot of people have seemed to suggest, or not seemed, have come out and said, I've gotten in arguments in Facebook on it way back in April with people, well, this is just temporary. It doesn't violate your constitutionally protected rights, you idiot. This is just temporary. Well, I don't care if you think it's temporary or not. Our Constitution doesn't allow our government to step all over our constitutionally protected rights for 5 minutes. Let alone for 6 whole months. And that's the precise argument I made at the start of my oral argument in front of the Michigan Supreme Court on Wednesday. What is required to arrest her? I'm trying to figure out how to say this appropriately. Well, forgive me. And if you have your kids watching, just cover their ears for the next 3 seconds. Balls. It takes balls to arrest her. Do they have the law on their side? Yes, they do. Should they be arresting her? Yes, they should. Why are they not? Because they don't have that thing I just mentioned a minute ago, but I didn't tell you to keep your children's ears covered for now, so I won't say it again. That's all. That's all it takes. So anyone who wants to arrest her for committing a variety of crimes, including violation of, 18 U.S.C. Section 241. That'd be great. I think I do know a jail that she can be housed in the state of Michigan. So if you need to know that, give me a call. We'll get you hooked up, because I got sheriffs who love the Constitution and want to do their job to enforce it. So, how do you feel the counter responses from the justices, especially? How did you feel with the counter responses from the justices, especially the attorney for the AG? I'm not sure what the question really means, but I love the questions. And quite frankly, I think the only questions, if you really looked at things, the questions that the evil side was getting were because their arguments are crap and they go in circles. When the attorney for the attorney general, I don't know if you caught on to this, but when the attorney for the attorney general literally said, well, because I pointed out there, were over 177 executive orders, and because of that, one of the justices was questioning the attorney for the attorney general's office based on that. And they said something about, well, what do you think about that? And what do you think about that executive order? Whatever the question specifically was. The response from that attorney was, well, I don't know. I'm not able to quite keep up with all of these executive orders. She just keeps issuing so many, I can't possibly keep up. Say what? That was the attorney for the attorney general's office who said that on record with the Michigan Supreme Court. So I'm glad I decided to raise that point in my oral argument. So I thought it was a good question that was being followed up. If they rule in our favor, does this eliminate the executive orders? The executive orders are eliminated already. They're not a thing legally at all. So we don't have to follow them even now. All that the court will do is tell people, yep, you're right. They're not a thing. You don't have to follow them. That's what they should be telling people. But even if they don't tell us that, do you get your rights from the Michigan Supreme Court or the governor or the attorney general? I don't. I get mine from God. And all of us as Michigan residents are guaranteed that in our Michigan Constitution, right in the preamble. We get our blessings of freedom from Almighty God. So I'm going to rely on that, regardless of the outcome from the Michigan Supreme Court. Obviously, they'll make our job a little easier if they do the right thing. But if not, I'm not just sitting on my laurels and waiting for them to come around on that topic. No, thank you. Are the number of executive orders factored in the Michigan Supreme Court decision? I'll tell you what, I wasn't sure they were listening to me. I was only given 5 minutes, same as the legislature's attorney and the attorney for the Michigan Democratic Caucus. But they used the facts and figures and things that I said within my first 10 or 15 seconds as questions, as the basis for questions for the other attorneys. So I think they were listening, and I think that they are understanding that the number of executive orders does factor in, and it shows how unreasonable she's being, which is what she's claiming the, I believe it is the Emergency Powers of Governor Act of 1945 says that the executive orders have to be reasonable. They're not reasonable if there's so many that even your own counsel can't even be bothered to read them all. Why are the Michigan Supreme Court justices asking about the public health code if the executive orders are unconstitutional to start with? Good question. It's a red herring. It is a distraction. And that is exactly what I was going to mention in my last 30 or 40 seconds had I been given that opportunity, but I just couldn't get it all out in time. So I plan to cover that myself. It doesn't matter what the definitions are of any of those things, because they don't have the right to do that no matter what we call it, no matter what label you slap on it. They don't have the right to make all these executive orders. None of them do. And the legislature doesn't have the right to make them in the format of laws either. It's just an additional problem that it's the governor trying to make them as though they're laws, but that's not what makes them terrible in the first place. What makes them so terrible is that it's trampling all over our individual freedoms. And what the argument has been made by supposedly Christian conservative freedom fighters is that it's totally okay for them to do this because it's equal. There's an equal protection thing here. As long as she's doing this equally to us, it's all okay. No, first of all, she's not doing it equally. But second of all, even if she is, if she orders each of us to kill our firstborn children, that would be an equal thing she could do, but that doesn't make it right. It certainly doesn't make it constitutional. So, children in sports wearing masks would be a health issue, right? Absolutely. And hopefully I can figure out how to utilize the expertise of people that I know, like Kristen Megan, with that OSHA experience and other background to help me. In fact, might even talk to expert immunologist and epidemiologist, Dr. Martin Dubrovic, on this particular issue. Guesstimate how long before Michigan Supreme Court issues the ruling. I guess I already answered that. Maybe do a live video where you just answer questions. That's what I'm doing. So good. I'm rolling right through these. Why can't we fight to remove this governor? Oh, we can fight. But removing the governor, no matter how you do it, whether it's recall, whether it's impeachment, any of those things, other than the next election, if you do it before the next election, you just get the you get the lieutenant governor, Gilchrist. He's no better. Absolutely no better. Now, if you want to go and sign that recall, I'm not saying don't do that. As long as you know you're going to get Gilchrist and you're comfortable with that, that's fine. Sign the recall. Send the message, this is not okay. Just know that it's about 1,165,000 people, signatures from registered voters are needed in order to get that on a ballot to determine whether, and all the special election will ask is simply this, and it would be May of 2021. That's our only shot at this point. It would say, should Gretchen Whitmer be recalled from the office of governor? Yes or no? That's it. And if enough people, a simple majority, say yes, then she is removed from office. And as soon as those election results are certified, then the lieutenant governor takes the rest of the, I can't even think of how you would word that. He finishes her term of office. So, do judges know if they agree with her, she can do this her entire term? Well, that's what was disgusting about the Court of Claims judge. Remember, the original trial court judge who had the hearing back in May. And she was asking some really great questions of the governor's attorney in that case. And it was a different attorney than than the attorney we saw at the Michigan Supreme Court. And anyway, the questions were basically going to that point, like, so the governor just thinks she can keep doing this until she says she's done, so it could just go on for all eternity. And in fact, the judge in that case pointed out in her line of questioning, so wait, so if the governor can do this and exercise these powers, then so couldn't she just say there's such an emergency, so we would have to extend the election dates and then push things out so she could just keep being the governor? Anyway, good points that were made, and yet she ruled in favor of the governor in the end. Who knows? Who understands that? Will she be punished or sanctioned? I'm not going to rest until our Michigan governor gets punished appropriately. There are definitely remedies under our law to punish her. We just need enough people willing to stand up and do what's right to make a change here. And sometimes if the elected officials are not willing to do it, then it means you pestering them and bothering them, emailing, calling, texting, showing up in person, writing them letters, and demanding them to do the right thing and uphold their oath of office, which includes holding her accountable when she does not uphold her oath of office. So every single person has the power to do that. Don't think that just because you're sitting at home and you're, mostly a Facebook watcher or even a Facebook warrior. Maybe you're typically out there making a lot of posts or videos or spreading the word. No matter what you normally do or how quiet you normally are in situations, you have the power to influence them. They're listening, even though they're trying really hard not to listen. They've got those, whatever. They've got their ears closed to this, right? Doesn't matter. Our voices are continuous and our voices are strong. So all you need to do is keep talking, even if you think they're not listening to you. They are listening. Just be a voice of reason. Be a voice of logic. Be a voice of the law and the Constitution. And don't waver from that, and don't stoop to their level with all that they're doing. And they will listen. Even if you think they're not listening, they will listen. What do you think will happen with the 1945 law, repeal 1945, and how will that affect the ruling on this case? Well, nothing on that is going to happen now. Legislature's not in session. I don't remember when they go back into session. Actually, I think it's September. Maybe it's any day now that they'll go back into session, but they have 45 days. Once it's turned in, they'll have 45 days to decide if they're going to vote in favor of the 1945 repeal. And if they get enough signatures to do that, then it becomes a law where the 1945 law is taken away. It's repealed. But they have to have enough valid signatures, first of all, and the legislature has to act upon it. So will that impact this case? I really don't think it will, because again, the Supreme Court acknowledges the governor's not just relying on the 1945 law. Absolutely not. She's relying on public health codes and a variety of other statutes. She is not simply looking at the 1945 law. So the whole issue is not going to be deemed moot simply because the 1945 law might get repealed in this process. Because I don't care what law you're relying on. If you're violating our constitutional rights, you're violating them, period. So you can claim you're resting on law number 1 on this day and law number 2 on that day, but the issue's still the same. Do you have the right to use a state law or even a federal law to violate our constitutionally protected freedoms? The answer is no. Let's see. Michigan Supreme Court can make Whitmer show them. Can the Michigan Supreme Court make Whitmer show them where she is getting the COVID-19 numbers and data? Yes, legally, and legally the legislature has already issued subpoenas, and as far as I understand, they have not received any answers from her on those subpoenas because the numbers they were given from the hospital so far were conflicting, and that's why they issued the subpoenas back in April or May. Oh my gosh. Can we file a class action lawsuit? You can always file a class action lawsuit. There's a lot to it, and I don't agree with it because basically what a class action lawsuit does is if it gets certified, if it gets approved by the court, essentially what happens is everyone who would be included in that class action lawsuit is included unless that person specifically excludes themselves. So let's say I try to file a class action lawsuit on behalf of all Michiganders who have their rights violated by these executive orders, and I sue the governor for that. Every single Michigander would be included if that class was certified. Every single Michigander is included in part of that and cannot sue her on their own unless they purposely exclude themselves from that lawsuit. I don't like to bind the rights of other individuals, even if in general they would like me to speak for them. I don't like to do that. I think that's highly inappropriate. I am not a fan of class action lawsuits. If I was going to file a lawsuit, it would be with a bunch of named plaintiffs, with maybe some individual named plaintiffs that are the main named plaintiffs, if you will, but then a bunch of other people, anybody who wants to sign on who would be an appropriate party for that particular case. But I won't do a class action lawsuit and speak on behalf of people who are not consenting to have their rights being scooped up and dealt with in such a way. Actually, a couple of these are the same question. What we could do to be most effective and most efficient in all of this. Don't put your eggs all in one basket. Pay attention to what's going on. Pay attention. Watch the actual court hearings. Don't listen to the news at all. Talk to your friends and neighbors and relatives and coworkers and give them the facts. Tell them the truth. Give them the link to restorefreedomkh.com and ask them to actually look at the resources tab and look at the actual documents for themselves. If anybody thinks that this is actually all okay, it's totally fine to do, ask them to read my most recent brief to the Michigan Supreme Court, at this point, the most recent brief, and ask them to read it all the way through. It's in English. Ask them to read it, and then if they really think that it's totally still okay, well, I'd like to have a discussion with them. We can even do it as a Facebook Live. I'd be totally fine in debating the other side, if you will. But I think if people really understand the truth, they really understand the Constitution, and they understand the laws that are involved, they would, I just don't see how you can argue that any of this is okay. I mean, in reality, when Justice Bernstein was questioning the Attorney General's counsel last week about wearing a mask and whatnot, and how he could be found guilty of a misdemeanor simply by leaving his home, being in his home property, but just stepping outside to get fresh air without a mask on. She said, well, but I don't think they would do that. Well, that's not how laws work. If it's a law, it's a law, right? It's not a law just because a cop particularly doesn't care to enforce it on any given day. That's not how we do things here. That would not be equal protection guaranteed to us in our U.S. and state constitutions, guaranteed to us in a few different places of our constitutions. Voter guide, like I said, it will be coming. I just don't have that now. Combine the two questions into one with a 28-day plan. A couple of these questions I just don't know. If we win, can they appeal? I don't know what they would appeal, because the only thing that would be moving it outside of the Michigan Supreme Court would be if it was removed to the U.S. Supreme Court, and the U.S. Supreme Court generally doesn't rule on state constitutional provisions. It would be only ruling on or interpreting U.S. constitutional provisions, which largely have not been litigated or raised by any of these parties or attorneys. I've been hammering on them, but they have not. So I would think if we lose on this point, we can appeal, but they cannot. But we'll see. Several of these questions are about voting. Can a sheriff arrest her? Absolutely. She's violating the law. Wouldn't a sheriff be able to arrest anybody who's violating the law? I would think so, but... What relevance does the fact that some of the EOs from May have been lifted? Doesn't matter that some of the EOs have been lifted. The fact that she lifts some and re-implements others, and that they have the same basic terms and same basic concepts. What about the fact that she has said, well, when the second wave comes, it's going to be worse and we're going to re-lock down the state? Well, we know a second wave is coming, which I would do air quotes around right now, but I'm holding two different phones. But it's like a flu. It is like the flu, only less deadly than the flu. So it's going to be on a cycle where it comes and goes. It ebbs and flows throughout the year, and it's not going away. Even Fauci has said it's here to stay now. So not sure why we would act like it's an emergency that's just a temporary thing. So no, the fact that she has had executive orders come and go on these topics, I don't think has any relevance. The next question is, what do you think of the female justices barely asking any questions? Not sure.